Hi everybody, it's Rich from Colorado Paratech again. Today we're going to discuss some of the devices that everybody uses out in the field. This was inspired by a video I saw by Randy Carver of Carver Paranormal. So thanks Randy for the inspiration on this. I think it's time we learned our devices a little better. Today we're concentrating on devices that particularly respond in the EMF spectrums. Okay, so I assembled a collection of devices popularly used in the paranormal field dealing with EMFs. As most of you know, EMFs means electromagnetic fields, and these devices deal in one way or another with those fields. We will talk about each one individually, but first you have to realize that an EMF field is made up of three different kinds of waves. There are magnetic waves, there are electric waves, and there are radio waves. All three of those comprise an electromagnetic field, or electromagnetic wave. Okay, we're going to be dealing with mainly the magnetic waves today. Okay, let's discuss the devices. Okay, first up is the ELF Zone EMF meter. This is probably the cheapest one you can buy. They run about $10 to $12, $15 in some places, but they actually work. They are a single axis meter, and their frequency range is between 20 Hertz to 10 kilohertz. The sensor is on the side, located along this side here, so that's going to be its most sensitive point. Next up is the ever popular K2 meter. Now these are very sensitive meters, some would say too sensitive. The K2 meter's frequency response is from 50 Hertz to 20,000 Hertz or 20 kilohertz. It is a single axis meter. The sensor points up and down, located here, so it's going to pick up what's above and below it. Next up is the popular Ghost meter, another EMF meter. This one's frequency response is 50 Hertz to 1 kilohertz or 1000 Hertz, single axis meter, and the sensor points forward, so it's going to receive out here. Those are the strongest reception points. And next up is the cell sensor EMF meter. It's virtually identical to the Ghost meter, except the probe or the sensor is external and connects with a wire. It's a single axis meter and the same frequency response as the Ghost meter, 50 Hertz to 1 kilohertz. Okay, this is the Lutron 822 EMF meter. Very popular as well because it has a digital readout. The frequency response is between 30 Hertz to 400 Hertz. So it's a low frequency EMF meter. The sensor on this one is on the sides, points out to the sides, so its best reception is here and here. Now one of my favorites, the Trifield Meter. This is actually a 3-axis meter, so it receives forward, backward, side to side, and up and down. It has 3 different components too. You can measure separately magnetic waves, electric waves, or radio waves. I've got it set for magnetic right now. Okay, in the magnetic range it is sensitive from 50 Hertz to 100 kilohertz. In the electric range it's also sensitive between 50 Hertz to 100 kilohertz. In the radio frequency range it's sensitive from 50 Hertz to 3 gigahertz. This is a tri-axis meter, so it will receive top and bottom, side to side, forward and backward. Okay, next up is the ever popular millimeter. This is the 8704R REM. So it is an EMF meter and also has the REM function, which stands for radiating electromagnetic field, which it radiates its own EMF around an antenna to detect things that come in proximity to the antenna that can disturb the EMF field. The frequency range is 30 Hertz to 300 Hertz. But one thing it does do is when anything with an electric field or an electromagnetic field disturbs the antenna, comes in proximity to it, it disturbs its own radiating electromagnetic field and alerts. Next up is the eProbe EP1 by Colorado Paratech. Now this device only detects electron fields or any disturbance in the capacitance around the antenna. which means it has to be an electrical charge, not magnetic, to disturb the antenna, to change the capacitance, to set off the alarm, like so. Next up is the eProbe EP2, the next generation of the eProbe by Colorado Paratech. Same basic function. It detects disturbance and capacitance around the antenna. Only electrical disturbances will set this off. Okay, last up is the REM pod, made by the people who make the Emf Meter. It's the REM feature alone. Again, radiating electromagnetic field is what that stands for, which it radiates its own field around the antenna, very close proximity. Anything that comes in proximity with the antenna that has an electromagnetic charge will set it off. So observe, things without a charge will not set off the antenna, but as anything with a charge, like human body, comes close to it, it sets it off. Okay, aside from these things being set off by normal or abnormal EMFs, we're going to discuss a few things that might falsely trigger these items today. In particular, first up, we're going to be using a cell phone, which if any of you have ever used a K2 in the field, you know a cell phone will set that sucker off from anywhere in the room. Typically, cell phones are in the frequency range between 700 megahertz and 2.6 gigahertz. Now, today I'm using a T-Mobile phone, which runs in the 1.7 gigahertz to 2.1 gigahertz spectrum. Here's the phone. Now, first off, with no transmission or reception, just going to run this by the devices. Okay, we're picking up a little off the K2. Coming through here. It does set off the ghost meter, but not the cell sensor, which is a little strange because the cell sensor was supposedly developed to find cell phones or cell phone transmissions. Okay. Generally not getting a lot of response, only from the ghost meter and a little bit from the K2. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to dial a number with the cell phone, and we'll be transmitting and see how that affects any of the devices. Okay. Okay, now you can see as you move this, it causes more reaction than when you're still. Okay, next up, I'm going to try a simple text test. We will send a text. Okay. And again, you can see it directly affects the K2. Okay, for the next test, I'm going to run the next room and call the cell phone. Okay. Okay, again we get the most disturbance from the K2. Okay, that was a Samsung Galaxy S2, very well shielded phone, so it's not as bad about spurious radio waves. Although all cell phones will trigger these when it's in transmission mode. So be aware of that if you're sending a text, if you're making a call, that type of thing, you're going to set off some of these meters, and usually always the K2 meter. Okay, now the next device that we're going to test is a handheld walkie-talkie, handheld two-way radio. This particular one is a Midland radio. This one transmits and receives UHF between 462 megahertz and 467 megahertz. As you can see, it spikes both of the REM pod and it spikes both the REM pod and the REM feature on the Mel meter. Also causes an EMF spike on the Trifield, on the Lutron, and on the K2. Okay, now you can see, well, picking up the electronics in the device. Get a little bit of a thing. Okay. So as you can see, in normal mode, when not receiving or transmitting, it doesn't affect these units very much. Again, this is on low power, set for low power transmission. You can see it peaks the REM pod and the REM feature on the Mel meter. It also affects the Lutron meter and the K2 and the Trifield as well. Okay, the next thing we're going to try is an EM pump that puts out electromagnetic waves. We'll see how this affects the units. Okay, we're going to turn the unit on, and as we approach, as you can see, I'm not real close, I'm approximately 3 feet away, and immediately the K2, the ghost meter, and the Lutron are affected, as well as the Trifield meter. And the Mel meter as well is getting a spike. As we get closer, does not affect the E-probes. Pegs the Trifield meter when you get in close. And all of them, when you get within a foot, are affected by it. So be aware, if you're running an EM pump and a ghost meter and a Trifield meter, any of the standard EMF meters generally will be affected within about 3 or 4 feet by an EM pump. Okay, for the last test, I'm going to go into the next room. Behind this wall, at about 4 to 5 feet, there's a microwave oven. I'm going to start that and see how it affects the meter. Okay, as you can see, all of the meters are being, all of the EMF meters are being affected directly by the microwave oven in the next room. Okay, I'm going to go turn that oven off now. Okay, so this concludes my little test of EMF meters and associated EMF devices. Things to be aware of in the field. It helps to know your equipment, learn your equipment, find all the ins and outs, find out what falsely triggers them. Then you will know the difference between a real trigger and a false trigger, and be able to collect better data. Be aware of things in the house that can set off these meters or give you false alarms. Electrical wiring, appliances, wireless routers, cell phones, cordless phones, anything that gives off radio waves, clock radios, all types of different devices can falsely trigger these devices. So be aware, do full sweeps before you begin your investigations, and be aware of false triggers out there. Alright, well, this is Rich from Colorado Paratech. I hope you enjoyed this little demonstration. Check us out at coparatech.com. And you all be safe out there, and happy hunting.